My mom tried to force my sister back on substances after nearly unaliving her, so I sent her packing for good. 2 years later, she's threatening to sue for family alienation. I don't even know where to start. Maybe the only way to explain this is from the beginning because the ending won't make sense otherwise. Growing up, my mom was unpredictable. I used to call it moods when I was younger, but now I know better. It was manipulation, control, emotional chaos in the name of motherhood. She wasn't nurturing, she was sharp. Her love felt like a blade. One minute she'd be hugging you so tight you couldn't breathe, the next she'd cut you down for blinking wrong. I have a little sister, her name's Emily. She's 6 years younger than me. When we were kids, I felt like it was my job to protect her. Because no one else would. Not Dad, he checked out emotionally before she was even born. It was always me. It was always us. When I was 13 and Emily was 7, I found her crying under her bed because Mom had taken her doll and thrown it in the trash for talking back. That doll was all she had. Mom would scream, then suddenly play innocent. "I'm just trying to teach her discipline," she'd say. It didn't feel like discipline, it felt like punishment just for existing. Mom had this way of making everything about her. If Emily or I were sick, she'd dramatically sigh, say she had no help, then cry to her friends on Facebook about how strong she had to be raising 2 ungrateful kids. We weren't ungrateful. We were terrified. But the real damage didn't come until Emily hit 16. That's when Mom introduced her to pills. I shit you not. She told Emily they'd help her calm down. Said they were just for her nerves, that she used to take them too when she was Emily's age, and look how she turned out. I begged Emily not to take them. But she was a teenager with a desperate need to feel normal in a world where nothing made sense. I get it. I do. What happened next still haunts me. Emily overdosed. I found her. Blue lips. Vomit. Eyes barely open. I don't remember how I dialed 911, I just remember my hands shaking so hard I couldn't hold the phone straight. Paramedics said we were lucky. 1 more hour and she would have been gone. I screamed at my mom in the hospital waiting room. Screamed until security told me to calm down or leave. She just sat there with this blank look and said she was being dramatic. It was only a little something to help her sleep. My world broke that day. But Emily survived. She went to rehab. Therapy. She worked so hard to crawl out of that darkness. And I swore to her and to myself that she'd never be in that kind of danger again. Not while I was around. Fast forward 2 years. Emily's 18. Clean. In college. Doing better than any of us thought was possible. And Mom came back. Like a vulture sensing weakness. She started showing up at her dorm uninvited. Sending care packages with her old prescriptions. One day, Emily opened a box and found a half-full bottle of benzos with a note, "Just in case you get overwhelmed, baby girl. Love, Mom." That was it. That was the moment. I drove straight to Mom's house. I didn't yell this time. I was done yelling. I said, "You're never seeing Emily again." She laughed. Laughed. Like I was joking. "You think you can keep a mother from her child?" She snapped. I didn't argue. I went home, changed the locks on my house she had a key from before, blocked her on every device, called every relative and told them she is not welcome anymore. If you try to sneak her into our lives, you're out too. Emily came to live with me full-time. We started fresh. And it was peaceful. For the first time in my life, the air in my house wasn't filled with tension. No walking on eggshells. No guilt-tripping phone calls. No bizarre Facebook rants. Just us. Healing. But peace doesn't last when toxic people need an audience. The thing about cutting someone toxic out of your life is that at first, it feels impossible. You think about birthdays, holidays, the what-ifs. You question yourself. You feel like maybe you overreacted. That's what they count on, the guilt. But once the dust settles and the silence kicks in, that silence is addictive. Emily and I built a routine. She went back to school and started volunteering at a crisis hotline, said she wanted to help other girls who had been through stuff like her. I started therapy. Got real about my own trauma. I learned words for things I'd spent my whole life just feeling. Narcissistic abuse. Enmeshment. Gaslighting. I learned that what we went through wasn't just how moms are. It was a damn minefield. There were small victories that felt huge, waking up without dread. Laughing at dinner. Emily bringing home a stray cat and naming it Pickles because he's kind of weird and throws up sometimes, but I love him. Our life finally had room for joy again. But Mom, she didn't disappear. First came the fake Facebook posts. Pictures of old birthday parties she barely showed up for, captioned with stuff like, "My beautiful children. Miss them every day." Some people let others poison their minds. Cue the sympathy comments from people who didn't know the full story. Then she started contacting relatives, spinning tales about how I was holding Emily hostage, that I'd always been jealous of their bond. Some of them bought it. My aunt messaged me a long, guilt-soaked email asking how I could deprive a mother of her daughter. I didn't even respond. We'd done the work. We were building something real. I wasn't going to let her ruin it again. Not this time. But 2 months ago, almost 2 years to the day since I threw her out, an official-looking envelope showed up at my door. Registered mail. A notice of intent to sue. I opened it with shaking hands. It was from a lawyer claiming she intended to pursue damages for emotional distress due to intentional family alienation. I laughed at first. Like, actually laughed. Out loud. Because the absurdity of it hit me before the fear did. But that fear came quick. Was this real? Could she actually sue me for not wanting her in our lives? I called an attorney. Paid more than I could afford for the consultation. She told me that while family alienation lawsuits are rare and hard to win, especially between adult children and parents, there were loopholes depending on the state. Some lawyers will take them if they think they can bully a settlement. That's when the calls started. Blocked numbers. Voicemails. We just want to talk. You'll regret doing this. Emily needs her mother. Then came the messages to Emily. She messaged her on LinkedIn. Can you believe that? LinkedIn. Saying things like, I'm still your mother. One day you'll see he turned you against me. Emily cried for an hour after reading that one. Said it brought her right back to the moment she almost died. I sat on the floor beside her and promised her again that I would never let that woman near her. Not as long as I was breathing. We sent a cease and desist. We documented everything. Screenshots. Letters. Voicemails. We locked our social media. Told our landlord to report any strange visitors. I even installed a ring cam. But here's the twist. The lawsuit wasn't just about us. She started contacting my job. Sent a letter claiming I was emotionally unstable and a danger to myself and others. She attached some blog posts she'd made years ago pretending to be me, full of dark rants and unhinged ramblings. My boss called me into the office concerned. Luckily, she knows me. Knew the history. Said she'd back me if it escalated. That was the moment I truly realized what Mom was capable of. Not just manipulation. Not just emotional games. But full-on scorched earth tactics. And yet, despite it all, I felt calm. Because I had truth. I had evidence. I had distance. And most importantly, I had Emily alive and thriving. I used to think the worst part of cutting off a toxic parent was the silence. Turns out it's the noise that comes after. Once my mom realized her lawsuit wasn't going to scare me into submission, she went full scorched earth. She turned Facebook into her courtroom, her diary, her war zone. She posted this long, dramatic status, one of those not everyone knows what really happened kind of posts. You know the type. The manipulative ones dressed in vague sadness to bait sympathy. She said I'd been brainwashed by bitterness, that I was keeping her daughter away for revenge, and that she had no choice but to pursue legal action to reconnect with her family. The comments came flooding in. From cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. From church friends who once gave me candy at Christmas. People I barely remembered suddenly had opinions on a situation they knew nothing about. One comment read, "No child should turn their back on a mother who gave them life." Another, "He'll regret this when she's gone. You only get one mother." You know what stung the most? Seeing my godmother, who once told me I was like a son to her, comment, "Praying for peace and reconciliation." Not a single word about the overdose, about the drugs, about the truth, just reconciliation. But let me tell you something about that word. It's only meaningful when both sides want peace. When one side just wants control again. That's not reconciliation. That's a reset of the abuse cycle. Emily saw the post too. She stayed strong for a couple days, but on the third night, she knocked on my door holding her phone and whispered, "Why are they all pretending like it didn't happen?" And I had no answer, because I ask myself that same thing every time I remember the hospital room. Her eyes fluttering, her chest barely moving. So I did what I had to. I started speaking up. I made my own post. I kept it clean, factual, and brutal. I laid it all out. The pills, the overdose, the hospital, the manipulations. I explained how I cut contact, how I supported Emily through recovery, how our mother tried to worm her way back in with more drugs. I posted screenshots of the note Emily got with the pills. "Just in case you get overwhelmed, baby girl." It exploded. I got flooded with messages. Some apologizing for believing her lies, others just stunned into silence. A few relatives privately thanked me for speaking up, saying they'd always felt something was off about her, but never knew the full story. Some families stayed neutral. Some doubled down, said I shouldn't air family business in public, that I was being dramatic. One uncle told me I was emasculating myself by being so emotional. I blocked him. The divide became permanent when Mom's lawyer actually sent a second notice demanding a mediation session to rebuild the maternal relationship and establish supervised family visitation. Supervised. Like she was entitled to see Emily, as if she hadn't almost killed her. As if this were some bitter custody case and not a daughter surviving her own mother's poison. My lawyer laughed. Literally laughed. Told me there was no legal precedent here and that unless we were minor children, there wasn't a judge in the country who'd force a reunion. But emotionally, it shook us, because for a moment I remembered being 10 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor after she slapped a plate out of my hand and screamed that I never appreciated anything. I remember cleaning up broken ceramic with my bare hands and telling myself, this is normal. She's just tired. That kind of brainwashing doesn't go away easy. Even years later, it whispers in your ear, you're the bad guy. You're the ungrateful one. You'll regret this. But then I'd look at Emily, and I'd remember the truth. We were never the problem. We were the casualties of a woman who needed control more than connection. We weren't throwing away family. We were finally saving ourselves. I honestly thought we'd made it past the worst of it. After the legal threats, the smear campaign, and the social media sob stories, I figured the storm had finally spent itself. But that's the thing about people like my mother. They don't get tired, they get creative. It started with Emily's phone blowing up again, only this time the messages weren't from unknown numbers or fake Facebook accounts. They were from someone we trusted. Our cousin Lauren. Lauren had always been cool. Grew up more like a big sister to Emily than a cousin. She helped Emily through middle school drama, taught her how to do eyeliner, snuck her into concerts their parents would have never approved of. When Mom got cut off, Lauren was one of the only people who reached out to say she supported us both. So when Emily showed me the text, hey, I think you're being too hard on your mom. She's hurting more than you realize. I just stared at the screen. Emily thought it was a joke. She typed back, what do you mean? Then silence. For 2 days. Then a message from Lauren's Instagram, she just wants to talk. What's the harm in hearing her out? And that's when the pieces fell into place. Lauren had been seeing her. Meeting her behind our backs. Feeding her information. That meant she knew. She knew about the pills. About the overdose. About the voicemail threats. About everything. And still, she was giving our mom a lifeline straight back into our lives. Emily didn't cry. She just shut down. Locked herself in her room and ghosted everyone for 2 days straight. I heard her throwing up once. She told me later it was like reliving rehab all over again, like betrayal had a flavor and it lived in the back of her throat. I called Lauren. No yelling. Just quiet fury. I asked her how she could betray Emily like this. Her answer? I thought maybe if you guys just talked, things could go back to normal. I nearly laughed. Back to normal. As if normal was anything more than survival with a side of trauma. I told her she was done. No more access. No more updates. I didn't care how close they used to be, trust wasn't a rubber band you could stretch and expect to snap back into place. We blocked her on everything. And I changed the Wi-Fi password at home just in case she'd ever connected a device. That's the level of paranoia trauma teaches you. You don't just lock the door, you check the windows, the back gate, the goddamn air vents. And then, because clearly my mother wasn't finished, we got a letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. On some fake floral stationery like it was from a Hallmark movie instead of a woman who tried to kill her kid with pharmaceuticals. It said, I still remember the day you were born. You were so small and I loved you more than anything. I don't know how we got here. I forgive you for how you've treated me and I hope one day you'll forgive me too. Tell Emily I'm proud of her. Even now. There was no return address. I burned it in the fireplace. I didn't even let Emily read it. Because I wasn't going to let that woman weaponize nostalgia. Not after everything we fought to rebuild. That same week, I got promoted at work. It should have been a high point. But instead, I found myself lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering how many more people she'd try to recruit. How many more betrayals would come disguised as love. How much more we'd have to lose before she finally gave up. But then I realized something. She had already lost. She lost the right to know about Emily's new boyfriend. She lost the chance to see Emily walk across the stage at her college graduation. She lost her spot at my dinner table. She lost the privilege of being updated, included, remembered. And you know what? We're okay. Emily laughs again. She talks about opening her own clinic one day. I started dating again too, something I thought I'd never have time or energy for. The people in our lives now know the whole story and love us more, not less, for surviving it. We don't need her. We never did. It should have ended there. After the betrayal by Lauren, the lawsuit threats, and the manipulated relatives, any normal person would have backed off. But my mother wasn't interested in healing. She was still chasing something else, the narrative. The illusion that she was the one wronged. So she made one final move. It was a Sunday morning. Emily had gone out with her boyfriend and I was home alone fixing a leak under the kitchen sink when I heard a knock at the door. Not the doorbell. A knock. My stomach dropped. I knew. Somehow I knew. I opened the door and there she was. My mother. Hair neatly done, lips painted in that rose-pink shade she wore when she wanted to look gentle. She had this look on her face like she expected a hug, like she was the prodigal mother returning to applause. I didn't say a word. She tried to step inside. I blocked the door with my arm. I just want to see you, she said, all syrup and sorrow. I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to talk. It was that voice. That voice. The one she used after every slap, every manipulation, every betrayal. Sweet, rehearsed, and fake as hell. I kept my hand on the doorframe and told her she had 10 seconds to leave or I was calling the cops. No yelling. Just cold. Empty. Done. Her smile dropped. She blinked a few times like she couldn't believe I was serious. Then the mask cracked. You're still letting her poison you, she hissed. That girl isn't your responsibility. She's mine. And you're just a scared little boy hiding behind some half-dead addict who... I shut the door. I locked it. And I stood there on the other side, forehead resting on the wood, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. I heard her yell something else from the porch, but I didn't listen. I didn't care. That was her last move. The uninvited visit. The desperate final card when all the manipulation, guilt, and legal threats had failed. I called the cops. Filed a trespassing report. I didn't press charges, but I wanted the paper trail. Emily came home later and saw the folded-up police report on the kitchen counter. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just sat down next to me and said, "So, think she's finally done?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out a folder from the drawer, a thick one filled with every letter, every message, every social media screenshot, every voicemail, lawyer note, and court document. We had receipts. We had truth. And more than anything else, we had peace. It's been 4 months since that day. Not a word since. No new Facebook posts. No calls. No notes taped to the door. Nothing. For the first time in years, silence isn't a trap, it's a gift. Emily's applying to grad schools. She wants to specialize in trauma recovery. Some days, she jokes about writing a book called How Not to Be a Mother. I laugh. But it's a tired laugh. As for me, I've learned how to live without looking over my shoulder. I've learned to sleep with both eyes closed. To laugh without guilt. To love without conditions. We even had Thanksgiving without the drama this year. Just a few friends, some roasted chicken, neither of us liked turkey, and bad board games. We went around the table and said what we were thankful for. When it was my turn, I said boundaries. Everyone laughed. But Emily knew what I meant.